Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Fantastic Female Role Models. With me here, you can see this is Diana. Diana, why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are and what you're about?
Sure. Hi, I'm Diana. Last name is Jurand. Who uses last names? They're so formal. I am an actor and I dare say a writer and I dare say comedian in Minneapolis.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. Um, what kind of training did you have to become an actor, writer, comedian in Minneapolis?
Yes. I grew up in a theater family. My parents were very involved in community theater, and my dad's parents, my grandparents, were very involved in community theater and the professional Yiddish theaters uh, at the time that they arrived in the U.S. So I
Mhm.
have this ancestry, I guess, of involvement in theater. And so growing up, my parents would be either in something or directing something. And I literally grew up in the Old Opera House Theater Company in Charlestown, West Virginia. I love that place.
Yeah.
And I would just sit and I'd watch rehearsals or I'd watch dress rehearsals from the balcony. I'd be running lines with my parents. And I, for the longest time, was not in theater. I
Hmm.
was not my jam. I was a dancer. I was a dancer through and through. And then I had my first audition for The Crucible. I got a role.
Hmm.
My dad directed it, so there was
Some bias.
there might have been some bias. Um, but it was very handy because my mom produced, my dad directed, so all of us were at the theater all together all the time,
Right.
just like normal. So I grew up in that world. I thought for the longest time I'm not going to be an actor.
Hmm.
I intentionally did not go to a conservatory program. I went to liberal arts schools, two liberal arts schools,
Yeah.
and I studied theater, but I wanted to study everything:
Hmm.
geology, philosophy, religion, because I thought I'm not going to be an actor. So
Right.
whatever. But I still was involved in plays. I had the great fortune of going to the American Shakespeare Center as a teenager, which is where I did some of um, uh, the most informative and what am I trying to say? The uh, the most helpful theater education I think I've ever had. And then I had
Hmm.
even better good fortune of getting to go to Yale for a summer conservatory
Oh,
for actors. So I've had a lot of diverse education and not a straightforward path.
right. So you don't have to know you're going to be an actor from age 3 and go to tryouts and all that kind of stuff when you're like 5.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I think about that life. I think that path could be a really good path. We see it in, like Anna Kendrick was on Broadway when she was, 12 or something, and
Right.
now
Yeah.
we all know
Right.
her. So part of me wishes, man, I wish I had gotten on that bandwagon, but then I never would have met you. I never would
Right.
have I would have never been in a steel pan drum band, So like,
Yeah, exactly. So all those other experiences that you
yeah,
got to have, right? Because you'd be on a set somewhere.
I would be, I would be strung out and burned out and,
Yeah,
whatever.
absolutely. Yeah. Because I think
Yeah.
of all sorts of child actors who are
It's a
rough
tough,
shape.
grueling industry. It's a really tough, grueling industry. And you can burn out fast, especially if you're working a lot. There was a year here where I was in back to back shows for an entire year. And at first I was like, this is great.
Right.
Some other people were like, wow, you're really killing it. But it's also like, yeah, and I haven't seen my friends in months.
Yeah. I'm tired.
I'm exhausted and I have no hobbies.
Yeah, I want to take a nap all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah.
awake right now, so we're gonna do this. Awesome. So then what inspired you to become a comedian then as like a type of act, right? Because you could have been like a dramatic actor, or you could have been, there's all sorts of different ways to act. So what kind of pushed you down the path to be a comedian?
Um, it's funny you mentioned this. I only started doing comedic roles in adulthood. When I was a kid, it was very serious, very dramatic, boom, boom, boom.
Mhm.
But I think I've always just been a funny person. I've always been a goofy person. Sorry, my dog ate some dirt and is now hawking it up, if you're wondering what that sound is.
Whatever, that's fine.
Um,
My kid does the same thing, so it's all
oh,
good.
okay, good. We're among friends here.
Just spitting dirt out, whenever he wants.
Um, I really, I love that comedy takes drama. You have to have, in order for there to be comedic relief, there has to be something dramatic, right? So
Right.
they always sort of coexist, or they always can coexist, but there needs to be drama in comedy.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to be a comedic actor, you have to also be a good dramatic actor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what maybe I wonder if what makes you think of me as a comedic actor is that I started doing stand up last year.
Yeah,
That
I did know about that, so I figured
okay,
that was probably a little bit of
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because in college there was not a lot of comedy. I also feel like university settings do not lend themselves to like comedic things. I feel like people just want to dig into the drama of, like Macbeth. We're
Well, I
gonna do.
feel like especially like at like a place like Lawrence, where like I always kind of joke that like they don't really train you to be practical. They train you to be like academic and like artsy and I feel like drama really lends itself to that, whereas like comedy could be like looked down upon in that way because it's not
Yeah.
like
When really, in my experience, I feel like to do comedy, you need to be even more on and sharp and smart and like
you
just
got you
zippy.
got to be quick and you have to be able to like change your change
Mhm,
your your where you're going like really quickly.
mhm. Very
Um,
nimble.
right, yeah, you've got to be liberal arts minded and be able to change directions, right, and
Yes.
do what you got to do.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I get that. When I was teaching, I would try to be funny, and it didn't always work. Would often land very flat, but that's okay. I taught middle schoolers and they didn't think anything was funny, so I
I
was
was gonna
like,
say you probably had a tough crowd. You had a
I
tougher crowd than any actor's ever had.
that's probably very true. Yeah, the 12-year-old and 13-year-old boys
Mhm,
and girls don't like anything, so
mhm. Yeah.
except for maybe themselves.
Except for those.
Yeah, and sometimes that's shaky too. You never know.
Okay, now if I were in your class, I would be laughing.
Well, good,
That was
good.
funny.
I really hit the corny dad teacher jokes. That was my bread and butter. Um, so now that you're doing stand up, is there like a favorite like bit or a joke or thing that you do when you do stand up that you think that you're really proud of or that you really enjoy doing?
A bit of my own, right?
Yeah, I mean, or
Okay.
just something that you're doing that maybe somebody else has done, but you think it's really awesome and you love doing it.
Um, when there are two things that come to mind. One is from a show, it's a Christmas show where you are basically playing yourself
Hmm.
with two other people, but it's this sort of like madcap romp through all these Christmas stories, and you have to do them in 90 minutes. And it's very, like the complete works of Shakespeare, the same guys
Sure,
who
but
did
it's the
that.
complete works of Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that's the kind of show that lends itself to sort of breaking the fourth wall sometimes, um,
Hmm.
whether you're looking at people or sometimes laughing at people. So
Sure.
I discovered through that show that when the circumstances are appropriate, if I am reacting to a fellow actor on stage, the audience will see me reacting and then join me in that reaction. So it just like lifts everybody up into this big like mess of laughter.
Hmm.
So that's always really fun to sort of get to know your audience every night and see how they're doing and how they're feeling
Right.
and interact with them in like a sneaky way that they don't necessarily realize you're planning or that
Right.
you
That's
know.
part of what you're doing, but they're just like, oh, she's
It's like, oh, she's laughing. And I'm like,
I did that on purpose.
I know you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then last year, I wrote a bit inspired by I had a wonderful boss when I was working in corporate America. His name is Bob.
Hmm.
And I'd got a lot of material from him because he's a quirky, wonderful, generous, lovely human.
Hmm.
But one day he wanted me to return a pair of socks. He didn't like the way they fit.
Of course.
And so I took that and I made it into a bit, and that has been a crowd favorite about how you're trying on a pair of socks and you're like, mm, I don't know.
Yeah, it's too tight on the edges.
It's too tight on the edges. The wool blend is not quite
Yeah.
right.
It's got like those little extra strings inside that you like stick your foot into and you don't like it. Yeah.
Yep.
I've never returned socks before, but I understand, I guess.
Yeah.
It's
You just
something I can really identify with.
well, when you're a millionaire and you have a
Right.
personal assistant, you can ask them to return your socks for you.
All right. I'll definitely make sure that that's part of the screening process.
Mm-hmm.
Will you be willing to walk down the street to TJ Maxx and return my socks? Lightly worn.
Lightly worn.
First question. Maybe followed by something else. I don't know. I haven't interviewed anybody for a job before, so I guess that's a skill I have to work on.
Yeah.
Okay. So now obviously doing these sorts of things, are there like certain challenges that you have to be prepared for when you're acting, or if you're doing stand up, that you have to like that you prepare for specifically, or like you kind of know going forward with it, you're like, okay, there's gonna be this thing's gonna happen. What am I gonna do?
For me, as far as stand up goes, I always know that I'm going to probably rush it. So, right
Mm,
before I go on, I just have to take a few deep breaths. I get nervous very rarely before going on in a play.
mhm.
Stand up, though, reintroduced me to what it feels like to get pre show nerves because poof, I was really,
Jittery.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I just take a few breaths and remember that the audience is on your side. They want to laugh, you want to laugh, everybody wants to have a good time. You're there to facilitate that and to
Right.
just to be in the moment and listen to the audience.
Mhm.
They will tell you when you can move ahead.
You're right. Go forward with what
Yeah.
you're gonna do.
Yeah.
Right.
Other challenges in rehearsal settings for plays, for example,
Mhm.
unfortunately, we are in a climate where not only are you the artist in the room, an artist in the room, but
Mhm.
you're oftentimes your own advocate. So
Right.
sometimes there will be moments that are uncomfortable or inappropriate or unprofessional,
Sure.
and you can't always count on someone else to call things out. I mean, that's hopefully what a stage manager is partially there for,
Right. That's their job.
to make sure that, yeah,
Right.
among many other things. We love our stage managers,
Mhm.
but it is useful, it is necessary to keep an eye on yourself and others. I think
Right.
others.
Right. And I think, as a teacher, that was something that we always try to teach kids, is that you have to be your own advocate, in anything that you do, right? You can't, if you didn't, if you don't understand something, you have to bring it up. If you don't tell us, we can't
Right,
help you, right?
right.
And I guess it's the same thing going into anything afterwards, right? If you're an actor and something's making you uncomfortable, like you have to say something,
Yes.
because otherwise they're just going to be like, oh, Diana's cool at this, like,
She's great, yeah.
yeah, it's like nothing's wrong here. So going off of that, then, has there been any time specifically that like a director or a supervisor or someone has like made you uncomfortable or asked you to do something that you're kind of like, I don't know if I want to do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
There was a play that I was in a couple summers ago. It's a show called Almost Maine, and it's a wonderful, beautiful show.
Hmm.
My character was supposed to get accidentally hit in the head with an ironing board. Um, and
Right.
the director did not want to stage that. He wanted it to just happen. And I was,
Oh,
"Mm, no, I can't get hit in the head with an ironing board over and over in rehearsals." And then,
they actually hit you with an ironing board?
yep. And so here's the funny story. My I had been dating a guy in 2017. We split up around Valentine's Day. It was okay.
Perfect time to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was okay. It was the right thing, for both of us.
Oh, I'm not saying that it's not the right thing. I'm just in general. Sounds
But
like
then
a rom-com plot.
yeah. But
Yeah,
then right at like the week we were sort of realizing that maybe we're not the best fit, we both got cast in this show.
beautiful.
Almost Maine.
It is a rom-com plot.
It's a rom-com, yeah. And he was the one who had to wield the ironing board. So you trust your director, right? You're in a situation where it's like, okay, you're the one calling the shots. I'm a trusting person. And so
Right.
like a couple times we were trying to figure out how can we make this happen. So the fun story is that my very fresh ex-boyfriend accidentally gave me a mild concussion from hitting me in the head with an ironing board.
Well, if you ever have to write like a romantic comedy where it doesn't pan out at the end, because that'd be great. I've always wanted that to be a thing, because I feel like every rom-com that's like these people are terrible for each other and they
Yeah.
know that, and then they end up getting back together anyway, and it's like, how is that feasible? Like you're setting up lots of people for these terrible expectations of how they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, if you ever decide
Maybe
you're going to write one of those,
Yeah, maybe that's
that
what I'll
scene should be it.
write.
Yeah. So there you go.
There you go. So this is an example of how I was my own advocate too late. Like we were trying it in rehearsals. We
Yeah.
also had a very young stage manager who was probably 22, 23. It was
Sure.
probably his first gig out of
Major
college.
thing. Right.
The director was his college professor. So there was like some questions
Thing
of
going on there.
because usually the stage manager is the person you go to who can go to the director and be like, this is what's happening, this is what I need. Boom, boom,
Right.
boom.
But he's,
But he's
he
not.
owes his career to his professor, sort of thing.
So I'm never going to work there again, which is fine. They don't want me, I don't want them.
Right.
Um, but it's an example of you are the product in that situation. I'm the product in that situation. My voice is valuable.
Right.
My voice is correct. I had just come off doing Three Musketeers, where we had a ton of stage combat, and it was incredibly an attentive, a practiced, a focused, a committed rehearsal space where everybody was aware that we've got these daggers and swords and bucklers and everything.
Yeah.
I went from that to this. And the rest of that year, if there was anything that needed stage combat, whether it was like a slap or a grab, I
Right.
was like, I'm calling my friend who's a combat choreographer, and I will gladly do this with you with the help of a professional.
Yeah. Who can teach us all how to safely hit each other or
Yes.
not hit each other.
There is no need for, that's the whole point of rehearsal, right? Is to make
Right.
it safe to practice it so that it's repeatable safely. So
Yeah. So we're not giving Diana mild concussions
yeah,
every other day,
yeah,
which would be bad for you.
it would.
Yeah, it would be. That's, brain damage, not great.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is the goods right here.
Yeah, right there. Yes. Everything below it, meh.
Meh.
Unimportant. Um okay. So um so have you faced any obstacles in your career, even not even as an actor, just like working in corporate America, or at any time in your life, specifically because you're a woman? Have there been times where like you've been like, wow, that was sexist or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, certainly in the theater community, I think there's like an expectation or habit in a theater community where things are very casual and they're laid back, and we're all artists. So it's like
It's
a
cool.
little, yeah. So there have been definitely situations where there have been unwanted sexual or physical contact of a sexual nature, which is also known as sexual assault. There
Right.
have
Yeah.
there have been unwanted verbal comments of a sexual nature, also known as sexual harassment, that I've reported, that many of my female colleagues in the industry and male colleagues in the industry have reported to deaf ears. So that's always
Sure. Right.
tricky. Hashtag believe women,
Me
time's up,
too.
me too, all
Yeah.
of that. So
Catch all of every, yeah.
yeah, that's been a challenge in the theater world. In the corporate America world, I had never before been in an environment where what you wore mattered so much.
Sure.
I had no idea. People would remember what I wore last week, and I was like, why are you storing brain space for this? I don't okay. So it mattered what you wore, and it mattered whether or not you wore heels. I'm a former hardcore ballerina. My feet are done. Like,
They don't do
thank you
that
so
anymore.
much. It's been a great 29 years. We're done.
Yeah.
So I'd wear a lot of flats, and apparently that mattered.
Ah,
And like, well, I'm not sacrificing my body for this arbitrary standard of sets of expectations that you have about how I should look.
yeah.
Like, if my shoes make you that unhappy, that's not something I need to address.
Like, was that like a you're not wearing heels, so you're not woman enough, or is that like a
Um,
you're not wearing heels, so because you were an assistant, right?
I was an executive assistant.
Right. So like you
Mhm.
weren't was that kind of like the you weren't wearing heels, so as your boss, I can't picture you as
Oh,
the executive assistant I want you to be sort of thing?
but Bob would not care, but or if he did care, he didn't say it to my face. I think because if he did, he knew that I would have something to say back.
Right, of course.
We had a very good relationship, so I could be very honest with him.
Huh.
I think it just I was not wearing heels, therefore I was a bit less professional than the other people who wore heels.
Of course.
And
Right, because professionalism is obviously tied to the size of your heels.
to your footwear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously.
And my job was active. I was assembling furniture. I was running around getting Bob stuff. I was taking his Audi in to get him a different Audi. Like, I'm not wearing heels for all that nonsense. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
I can't imagine driving in heels. Like, not that like I've never worn heels because one, my feet are ginormous. I never have. I never find ones that are my size. But like, it's just one of those things where it's like, it just seems like something that would be extra difficult to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like,
Yeah. Well,
you know,
that's what women need is just more barriers to make the things we do even harder.
well, I mean, what's the point of doing anything if it's not excruciatingly painfully difficult?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Coming from my place of privilege, I obviously know all about that.
Hey, you know what? That 2020 has been a great year in that I hope, or at least I see in the people I know, a, a realization of our own privilege. So,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I've
and I,
I
yeah.
guess in my view, because since I've kind of left the professional world and now I work in more of like a blue collar sort of workplace, I've noticed that there are obviously some people who have not made that realization.
Mm.
And so that's made my 2020 very frustrating. So I understand. Just in the opposite way. Um, going off of that then, what's kind of the opposite? What would be something that you would consider like your greatest acting accomplishment? Like what's like the thing that you're like the most proud of that you've done?
Ooh, that is a good question. What is the thing I am most proud of? My acting. Every corporate meeting I've ever been in, my best acting. Um,
No one gets to see it but me, but it's beautiful.
that is beautiful, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, wow. I am proud of my stand-up work. I decided to sign up on a whim. It was an amateur contest, so you could only participate if you'd never been paid to do comedy. And I thought, well, this is great. This is for me.
Right.
Um, I had to write my own material and prepare it. And I went to a few practice nights before the big competition. And
Hmm.
it was something I never thought I would, bring myself to do. And I was really proud that I signed up. I followed through. I did all the things. And it was a fun way to bring friends together.
Right.
This thing that I might fail at. And if I did fail, that's fine.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Go out on a limb, take a risk.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
because like the worst thing that could happen is that you sucked at it,
Yep.
and obviously you didn't. because I can't imagine you failing at something like that. So
Thank you.
yeah.
I did make it to the semifinals, so I'm somewhere between the 6th and 25th funniest amateur comedian in the Twin Cities.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
So that's pretty solid right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, can't go
Uh,
wrong with that.
but other than that, I think I'm proud of the times that I don't go after things if I don't really want them. So there might be an audition that sounds cool, but um, if if all of the variables aren't what I'm looking for, what excite me, if they
Right.
don't if they don't tug at me and I say no,
Mhm.
that's to me an accomplishment, because in this industry, when you enter it when you're in your 20s, you're supposed to just say yes to everything, everything, everything.
Right, no matter how bad or ridiculous it is.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So being able to be pickier also comes from a place of privilege,
right,
knowing I have other sources of income, or if it doesn't pay, I have other creative outlets.
right,
Huge, huge place of privilege. Um, it's also raising my expectations so that the expectations of the people who are creating this art also rise, so that ideally no one has to take a job that will pay $50 for an overnight paint shift. We're
right,
all lifting each other, supporting each other, being equitable,
right.
you know.
Everybody wins in the situation that you're. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. That makes sense. Because like I feel like I mean, this is a bad example, I guess, because he's really famous, but like Nicolas Cage stars in anything that they throw at him. And now he's got that reputation of being the guy who's in these absolutely awful movies, which I guess is working for him. But like, but I feel like as someone who's new to the industry and stuff like that, like that's a great way to end up like typecast or stuck in a corner as like, oh, you're the girl from that thing. Why would I want to cast you in this?
Yes.
Because then you can't break out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Be- Being a Nicolas Cage, which, as you said, works for him. If that works for you, good,
right.
work the game. Do your
I
thing.
mean, if you continuously make really awful movies, you've got to make some amount of money,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Heard Have you seen his test footage from when he was cast as Batman in like the 90s or something? He was going to play Bat. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've also seen like four of his terribly awful movies. Um, when I
You
was
don't
when I was in
national treasure.
RLA, because that was part of my one of my programs.
Nicolas Cage movie marathon.
It was called Shitty Movie Sunday. It was fantastic.
Where was I? I would have totally come.
I should have invited you. Yeah, we watched such great classics as The Room. Um, right, yeah, as bad as you can get. Um, there was a one that I like to watch called Troll Hunter. It's a fake documentary. It's like these Norwegian students who are like trying to figure out what's happening to like the bear population in their university, and it turns out that they meet this guy who's like the government sponsored troll hunter who's like kept the world of like Norwegian trolls secret from the
Hmm.
populace for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's a good movie. It's just the concept is ridiculous. The
Yeah.
execution's not fantastic. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff we'd watch. We'd watch just these awful movies. And then there was no discussion. There was no need. We just would finish and be like, well, that was fun, and then be done with
Well,
it.
that sucks.
Yeah. There's nothing left we could say after that.
Nope.
Yeah. So, is there anything that you're doing like right now that you're like working on like actively or
Yes.
yeah,
Been for everyone, 2020 has been strange,
right.
obviously. So theaters in the area are closed. There's not a ton of production going on.
Hmm.
I've been writing. I've been writing comedy. When comedy strikes me, I have to really, now is not like a very funny time, but there are parts about it that can be made funny.
Right.
Um, uh, I've been writing monologues. I've been working on my web series about Bob, which has been very slow going, but I've been working on that.
Right.
I have been doing quite a lot of voiceover, actually. I've turned my closet into a home studio.
Oh,
I'm
sweet.
doing professional voiceovers from my home studio
Ah, yes.
since, March when this all started. And so I've
So
been very blessed to
is
have
that
that.
like voiceover for like commercials, or is it like, oh, okay.
Yep.
So like
You
you hear yourself on the radio sometimes?
I do hear myself on the radio. One time I heard myself on the radio in the car and I just cranked up the volume. It's sometimes difficult to tell if it's you because you don't hear yourself very
The same
often.
way as other, right.
I was at a corner store and I heard myself on the radio and I was like, "Is this me? I think this is yeah, those are the words I said. Huh, this is me."
Cool. I'm famous.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you ever been like in a store, like somewhere where you've heard yourself and be like, that's me. This is me speaking right now.
I did that at that corner store because it was
Oh,
the first time I had been somewhere in public. Usually I'm in my car and I hear it and I'm by myself and I'm like, "Ah!" And then I
yeah.
call my mom and I'm like, "I heard myself on the radio." At the corner store, I was getting, whatever, tomatoes. Heard
Yeah.
myself, thought, "Is this me?" And then as soon as I realized it was me, I was like, "Guess what? This is me." Like, to the cashier who was just like, "Cool."
Great lady.
Exactly.
Congrats. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Little moments of achievement, you gotta share them with people
Oh
who
yeah, absolutely. Even if they don't care at all.
even if they don't care.
Right. Because it's for you, it's not for them.
Exactly.
Exactly. Awesome. Okay, so more into the role model-y part.
Mm.
Because obviously I wouldn't be living up to the name if I didn't ask you this kind of stuff. So if you were going to give advice to someone who was maybe in high school, or like maybe even younger than that, but they've just like they figured out, they've had their breakthrough moment, they're like, I'm gonna be an actor, or I'm gonna be an actress, or I'm really funny, I'm gonna be a comedian. Like what would you tell them? What kind of advice would you give them moving forward? Share your sage wisdom with us. um,
I would tell young women that it's gonna be tough. It's not gonna be easy.
mhm,
Obviously, brace for a lot of rejection. There are statistically more roles written for men than there are for women. So, as it stands right now, there are more opportunities for men than there are for women. I think we're living in a really cool time because we're seeing that change. We're seeing bit by bit more diversity, whether it's diversity of skin color, ethnicity, body type, sexual orientation, gender identity. We're thankfully starting to see more of that come through. But I would say to women, start writing. When you're an actor, you're not only an actor, you get to and are encouraged to be a content creator. So write stories that display the kinds of roles you want to be and the roles you want to see.
mhm,
Um, Second thing, your voice matters. Your thoughts and your insight matters. And if you're in a room where you don't feel as though it is,
mhm.
think about what's keeping you in that room, whether you need it, and if you can walk away. Because if it's not worth your time, I mean, again, if you're in a situation and you need the money and this is your contract and you have the job, I get it.
Right.
Um, but life is short. You have brilliance within you, you have a light within you. Girl, shine your light and be
Right.
around people who will reflect it back at you.
Mhm. That's great advice. And just to go off your point about even if you are contracted, you know,
Mm-hmm.
when I was teaching, I was in a similar space. I was in a space that wasn't for me. It wasn't it wasn't something that was really benefiting me, career wise, mental health, all that other stuff. And so I quit, and I walked away. And am I financially worse off for it? Oh, absolutely, like 100%. But, like in the 2 years now that I haven't been teaching, I'm much happier, and I get to
Good.
spend time with my family, and I get to spend time with my friends. and I'm getting a lot more out of what I want to do. And now I'm doing this, which is way more fun, and I think is going to reach way more people. Exactly. So, even if, to jump off Diana's point, even if you are contracted and you need the money, there's a certain point where you have to value yourself, and your life matters just as much as anybody else's does. And if they're creating a toxic work environment for you, you have to know that you can step away, and there's always other opportunities, even if you're like, oh man, my career is over because I quit this job. It's not.
It's not.
Yeah. There's not like a special Facebook group for every director in your city that they're all like, oh, yep, Mike quit.
Yep.
He's awful. Blacklisted. Done.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I love that point. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That also seems to remind me of asking for help. Like if you're in a situation where you're like, I need to get out of this toxic situation.
Right.
Then you land on your feet, you stand up and you're like, okay, I need help. The people in your life, the friends in your life are there to help you. And asking other people for help strengthens those relationships. Like, Mike, if you needed something,
right,
I'd be like, please call me, because
right, exactly.
Otherwise, what are we here in this world for?
Exactly. Yeah.
So ask for help too if you need it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the greatest things of advice that I know that I would have loved to have received and actually listened to when I was younger and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And like, I know especially in something like acting, you have friends for a reason, right? They're the people you drag to the bar so that you can do comedy with. But they're the people that you call on the way to your audition to like be like, I'm freaking out, and they're like, don't freak out. You're awesome. Stop that. Like that's how you get through it. Or like if you're gonna write something, like they're the people who are gonna read it first. When you finish your web series, I would 100% read the heck out of it, and probably just because I love everything that you do and you're awesome, just tell you it's great no matter how bad or good it is. But that's what the kind of that network is for. You have to have people who are in your corner.
Yes.
Yeah, no matter what you choose. But like if you're going to do something difficult like be an actress, having those people back you up is important too.
Yeah, you just gave me a mental image of the importance of stopping to look behind you. Like in that, when you're in that corner,
right,
don't forget who's backing you up.
Exactly. Yeah.
What a nice
image. I know. Woo. It's like have you watched Marvelous Miss Maisel?
Oh, I adore it.
We adore it as well. Me and Chelsea love it. But like you were like that reminds me of gosh, what's her name? Her manager.
Oh, Susie.
Susie, yeah. Like you got to have a Susie, and I think that's like you've got to have someone who's going to support you no matter what. Like even if it's absolutely ridiculous or something like that. If even if it's not acting, if it's it's like, oh, I want to be an actuary. Well, you've got to have a Susie who's going to be like, you get out there and do that math, man. Like you get after it.
You ace that exam.
Yeah, you pass that actuary exam.
Yeah.
Then afterwards, eat some ice cream. Be
Absolutely.
you. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Okay. So with all that, obviously you're still doing this, so you've got to have some sort of dream, goal, ultimate destination maybe in mind. What would that be? Uh-oh, did I lose you? Diana, come back. Oh, there you are.
You cut out.
There we go. We're back. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
I'm back.
What's
Internet.
the dream, right?
Yeah. So yeah, dream, goal, end destination.
Planning is not one of my strengths. I because I'm so like outgoing and gregarious, I meet people all the time and things either come to me or they don't. Right now, today,
Hmm.
my dream is, what is my dream today? Today, I'd like to write shows that feature characters I want to see. I've been very inspired recently by the new Star Trek Discovery. Even
Mm,
if you don't think of yourself as a Star Trek person, I would check out Star Trek Discovery. The lead character is a Black woman. She's a fantastic actor. Her character is so compelling.
mhm.
There's a woman who I identify with who has this big red hair and she's like curvy and she's not always sure what she's doing, but she's boldly making decisions.
She's doing it anyway.
She's doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that. And so I want to write shows that are funny, that have dramatic elements, but that are relatable, that feature people of all types, as we call it in the industry.
Right.
So I'd like to see more body types for both men and women.
Hmm.
That's something I'm interested in. Um, and just more media that can make the world seem a little smaller and friendlier and explorable and I have also been very inspired by the show Ted Lasso.
Oh, yes.
Uh,
I haven't watched it
recommend
yet,
to
but I've seen it.
anybody who needs like a balm for 2020. It um, I watched it probably 4 times all the way through, and it just is. It's a lot of fun.
Hmm.
So yeah, creating roles, creating opportunities for others, making people laugh, reminding people that you know life is what it is, but we can get through it.
Yep. It's, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, exactly. Being able to, you're not just making yourself successful. Your goal is to help others be successful as well, which I think is
Yeah.
is like the best kind of goal.
It's
Because
fun too because then if we're both successful, then like we'll lift each other up and then lift even more people up and lift even more people up. And if more people were like kind and empathetic and stoked and thinking of other people, the world would rock all the time.
yeah, pretty much. Because there are definitely people out there who are not about that life,
True.
and it's like, why do you
Yeah.
exist? Why are you still here? Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. And so then I guess the last big question I have for you then is, you already kind of touched on in the last point, but um, who do you draw inspiration from, and who gets Diana going in the morning? Like,
Oh man. Well, in the morning I'm very grumpy, so not a lot gets me. I wake up and I'm just like, who disturbs my slumber, like in Aladdin.
yeah,
Um,
how
but
dare
when
you?
once I have my cup of tea and I've, received the world,
Hmm.
I think about folks like Olivia Wilde. She's an actor and a producer, and she has hosted these events where they'll do she and a bunch of other actors will do script reads, and they'll reverse the roles. So the women will read the men's part, and the men will read the women's part. And her point is like, "Huh, don't you feel like a total throwaway character who has, like no voice?"
No point. Yeah, exactly. You're there just to like satisfy a quota.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
of her. I think of Shonda Rhimes, who is a very successful TV writer for Grey's Anatomy and How to Get
Hmm.
Away with Murder. And I think of Kerry Washington and um, who else? Gina Davis. Cool women who are um, interested in the same types of missions that I'm interested in
Right.
and who are
Yeah.
making them happen.
They're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Um, well, great. That's awesome. So I'm super excited that you're made time for this, because you're awesome, and people should look up to you. And now you're gonna be on the internet for forever, not just forever, five ever. And yeah, so this is awesome. Going forward,
Go ahead.
oh yeah, going forward, we're gonna have more awesome women like Diana come on and talk with me about what they do and how they do it and their goals and dreams and aspirations and how you can look up to them, or you can choose not to, but you should because they're fantastic. And yeah, Diana, is there anything else you wanted to touch on or talk about or just,
I
yell to the world since it's going to be on the internet forever?
never. I am just quickly going through in my head what I said to make sure I don't blacklist my. No, I'm just kidding. I want to ask you, what made you decide that you wanted to produce this show?
Yeah. Well, so back when I was teaching, I originally started making YouTube videos because my students were having trouble with their work. And then they'd go home and their parents couldn't help them with it because I taught math and science. So they would, it'd be like algebra, and they'd go home and they'd be like, "Hey mom, you want to help me do my algebra homework?" And they'd be like, "No." And so, this started off with like, this is how you do algebra. Um, and then when I stopped teaching, I went I went radio silent. So I privatized everything. I basically shut the whole thing down. And so about a couple months ago, I finally worked up the courage to put myself out there again. And so I republished everything. And I was like, well, I want to do something with this because it's here, and I put so much work into it. I might as well continue to. And so I was kind of just brainstorming because now I do a lot of jobs that require you to. I'm alone a lot during work, and so I'm walking around vacuuming stuff or doing this or that, and I've got lots of time to think. And I know one of the things that popped into my head was, well, it's like, I'm a feminist. I think women are great. And I know that oftentimes, especially with young people now, where they get their inspirations and they look to YouTube and YouTube stars, and like everything is now about like TikTok and that kind of stuff. And so I was like, why not put together, I know lots of fantastic, awesome women who do all sorts of great things. Why not give them a chance to put their voice out there, and have positive female voices on the internet, that aren't necessarily at the level of stardom as people like I think of like Brie Larson and Jennifer Lawrence and Miley Cyrus, who have these kind of reputations. And so people might be turned off to listening to them because they're like, oh, I don't want to listen to what Miley Cyrus says because she's Miley Cyrus. Which I think is ridiculous because Miley Cyrus is awesome, and she does great things.
Yeah.
She's a very giving person. But I think also it's nice to know that there are just ordinary people out there who have lived the same life experiences as you, who you may not personally know, but they have had that same experience as you, or they have the life experience that you wish that you had. And hearing from them and learning what makes them tick and what lets them be successful in what they're doing, could help you moving forward, whether you're a young woman or if you're a young man who's looking for a role model. There's nothing wrong with having a female role model. Most of my role models are women. You're staring at one of them right now. Diana's fantastic. She is, and she does awesome stuff. And every time I see her do something great, I'm like, that's so cool. And now she gets to share it with you, and you get a kind of an insight into what she's up to. And I haven't decided who's going to be next yet because I've got quite the list, but like I've got a pretty good idea. And the next person I'm planning on asking to do this, she's really awesome too, and she's got lots of life experience to share um, about what she does and how she works and what she does. And so, you know, that's just kind of where I was coming from. Um, you know, um, uh, especially
Exciting.
this year in 2020, you got to spread positivity because otherwise it's just kind of dreary and sad. So
Yep. Well, thank you for doing that. I think you're really forging some connections. Like, I mean, you and I hadn't talked in far too long, and just
absolutely.
getting to connect with you, no matter what it's for,
Right.
is helpful these days. And that you're lifting women's stories is so helpful. So thank
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so before we go, just so you know, in the description of this video, there will be a link to my website, which will have a specific little area for Diana. I have Diana's film reel
you.
and her own website linked on there, so you can go there and check out her stuff. And this video will be there too. And then whenever I add the next one, whenever we do another one, um, that one will be right underneath it. So there, it'll just continue to build as we go. Yeah, and Diana, if you have anything else you want me to share on that website, I can totally link it or put it there, or we can make that happen. So
Thank
um,
you. Wow.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. So I prepared a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So thank you so much for watching, and yeah, come on back for the next one. Get excited. Lift other people up.
Mm.
Don't be afraid to ask for help, and be an actress if you want to.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming, Diana.
Ah.
Hmm.